Well, starting today, the Louisiana Trust for Historic Preservation launched a website to document cemetery locations. Charles Burkett found out why it's critical to their mission.
It's really important for us, for the protection and the respect of the people that are buried there, to know about these before, a highway starts widening or a new building is being constructed on a site that may look like it's vacant, but there's burials there.
Brian Davis is the executive director for the Louisiana Trust for Historic Preservation. They are working to document all the cemetery plots in Louisiana. It's a big job, and he hopes people can help save the last remains of these ancestors.
There are also archives.
Even a gravestone can be informative.
Fraternal orders that they were involved with, churches will be given on a marker for somebody. Not just of birth and death dates, but of full names, things like that these really can tell us through these stone markers or metal markers that survive.
Genealogists like Laura Peppers rely on these records. She is making sure the information is not lost.
The information contained on these stones and the burial records get lost over the years. Even if the headstone gets lost, because they've been documenting, we know that they are there.
People want to connect to find out who they are and where they are from. Hundreds of people across the country are searching daily for answers.
She was calling to see what happened to her father because she had lost touch. And I found his funeral program, and I was able to scan it and send it to her in the email. And she called just sobbing because her name was in the obituary. It's like I wasn't forgotten.
For Peppers, when she found the grave of her grandparents, it became more than just facts.
It's a deep emotional connection. You feel like they're not just names on a paper.
The Stuart Layton Castle in Monroe, Pam Dupuy, registered their site with the family plots to make sure others can get the information.
Just this discovery process that the cemeteries play a huge role in.
She believes it keeps us connected.
Cemeteries connect us to our past. So this is a way for people who are descendants of anybody that's buried in this cemetery to connect, to learn more about their genealogy, their history.
It shows who we are as people.
It's a documentation of our history. It's a documentation of families. It's adding to the story of our communities. It's our collective biography.
In Ouachita Parish, Charles Burkett, KNOE 8 News.